A young man sits on a train, lost in heavy thoughts. He reflects on how people often say that in hard times, having a steady job is something to appreciate, yet he questions what there truly is to appreciate. His work leaves him burdened with tasks he cannot complete within the given time, and he faces criticism from the very people who create these unrealistic expectations. Exhaustion fills his days, and even his sleep offers no peace. When he first arrived in Tokyo, he carried dreams with him, but now those dreams fade, replaced by restless nights. He wonders how long he can continue living like this. Outside, intense rain pours down. It is 2:16 in the morning when he finally reaches his apartment building. As he steps out of the lift, the same thoughts return, weighing heavily on him. He lifts his gaze and notices a woman standing ahead, her back turned toward him. The sight unsettles him, and he questions whether what he sees is real or simply a trick of his tired mind. Something about her appearance feels familiar, and he recognizes her as Sayotomi, the woman who lives next door. She turns slightly and acknowledges him. He realizes she has just returned from work as well. The hour is very late, yet something about her situation feels off. He senses that asking too many questions might not be appropriate, so he prepares to head inside after a brief exchange. However, before leaving, he notices her hesitation and understands that she might be dealing with a problem. Sayotomi explains that she cannot enter her apartment because she left her key far away, at a place that would take hours to reach. On top of that, she has no way to contact anyone, as her belongings, including her phone and money, are not with her. He immediately understands that even if someone could help, it would not be possible at this hour. The rain continues to fall, and Sayotomi remains standing there, soaked and helpless. After considering her situation, he decides to help her directly. He offers assistance so she can find temporary shelter, but she resists at first, insisting that she does not want to trouble him. Still, he believes that people should support each other when needed. He steps inside his apartment and returns with a towel, offering it to her. "At least dry yourself while waiting," he suggests. As he does this, he reflects on how he usually avoids getting involved in other people's problems, especially when money is involved. Yet this situation feels different. He senses that Sayotomi is still holding something back. When he calls out to her again, she gathers herself and finally explains the real issue. She mentions that she has an important meeting in the morning, and the materials she needs are locked inside her apartment. Without those documents, serious consequences could follow for her company. He immediately grasps the gravity of the situation and recognizes that this is no small problem. There seems to be only one option left. Retrieving her belongings from the distant location would take too long. He asks about the condition of her balcony, checking if anything blocks access. She thinks for a moment and believes nothing stands in the way, though she isn't sure. He decides to move from his own balcony to hers, planning to enter by breaking a window if necessary. The risk is clear, and he accepts it, knowing that both of them are involved in the outcome. He invites her inside his apartment first, but she is worried about the danger. He explains how he will cross over, relying on balance to reach her side despite the rain. When she offers to take the risk herself, he refuses. Sayotomi hesitates, mentioning the untidy state of her place while he prepares to act. He steps onto his balcony and outlines what he will do once inside. She nods, but reminds him not to push himself too far. Moving carefully despite the difficulty, he manages to reach her side. She checks on him, and he reassures her that he is fine. He tells her to wait near the entrance while he handles the window. Recalling a method he once learned, he begins following it step by step. He wets the surface, secures tape around it, and prepares his hands before striking the glass. The task proves harder than expected, and the impact strains his hand. Despite the difficulty, he continues until the glass finally gives way. He proceeds with caution and unlocks the door from within. Inside, he notices the room is filled with boxes. The space appears simple and organized, though not what he expected. Meanwhile, Sayotomi waits outside, unease visible in her posture. She asks if he succeeded, and he confirms that he has entered. He opens the door for her, and she steps inside, concerned about what he might have seen. He notices her simple lifestyle, but does not dwell on it. He shifts his focus to practical matters and secures the broken window as best as he can. He advises her to clean up and take care of herself to avoid getting sick, especially after everything she went through to recover her documents. She steps inside and quietly says she's home. He welcomes her back, catching her off guard. It's been a long time since anyone greeted her like that. Still surprised, she repeats that she's home, and he gently welcomes her again. The exchange leaves a lasting impact on her. She reflects on how long it has been since she last experienced such a moment. He explains that living alone often removes such simple interactions from daily life. She expresses a desire to hear it again in the future, and he agrees, though he points out the late hour and suggests continuing another time. She asks if it can happen again the next day, and he mentions his usual return time. She considers this and then proposes a new arrangement. She suggests employing him for this role and offers payment. He asks if she truly understands what this kind of arrangement means. She says she does and calmly explains her financial situation, including how much she earns. As he listens, he reflects on the gap between gross income and what she actually takes home. She goes on to describe her life. She has no close relationships or real hobbies. Her routine is simple, and she rarely spends money despite being financially stable. She stays healthy, but has no one to share her achievements with. He responds by pointing out that relationships don't just happen on their own. She admits her limits and reasons how this small interaction has affected her. She feels unable to return to her previous routine without it. She then offers a monthly amount as compensation if he agrees to take on this role. He reacts with surprise at the size of the offer and questions the situation. He thinks her exhaustion is affecting her judgment and reminds her that he already has a job. She brings up his workplace, and he hands over his business card. After looking at it, she nods slightly, showing that she understands. Confused, he presses her on what she means, but Sayotomi avoids giving a clear answer. Instead, she guides Matsutomo toward the exit and thanks him for helping so late at night. He reassures her that he will take care of the broken window and tells her not to worry. She shows a hint of surprise before leaving, bringing the encounter to a quiet end. Even after returning to his own room, Matsutomo cannot shake his unease. The worry lingers as he wonders if he will wake up on time. When he checks the clock, panic hits. He has already missed the start of his workday. His phone is nearly dead and filled with missed calls from his workplace, especially from his section head. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, he quickly calls back and says he will arrive soon. His superior cuts him off immediately, telling him not to come in. Matsutomo learns that the company no longer considers him an employee and that showing up would only cause trouble. The call ends abruptly, leaving him stunned. Frustration builds, especially since his name is still being mispronounced, despite all his corrections. Sitting alone, he struggles to process how everything fell apart so quickly. He questions the strange turn of events and wonders whether what happened the previous night meant anything at all. Before he can gather his thoughts, there is a knock at the door. He opens it to find Saotomi standing there, calm and composed, completely different from before. Suspicion rises instantly. He wonders if she had something to do with what just happened. Saotomi confirms that he no longer needs to worry about his previous job. Her professional demeanor makes everything clearer, and he begins to realize that she truly meant what she said earlier. She states her intention to hire him and outlines the terms, including the monthly pay and the formal arrangements prepared by her company. Matsutomo can hardly keep up with how fast things are changing. Before he can respond, Sayotomi takes his hand and leads him forward, as if the decision has already been made. She leads him into her apartment, showing that his new role has begun. He follows, still confused, while she acts as if everything is already decided. As she steps inside, she says she's home in her usual way. Matsutomo replies the same way, doing what is now expected of him. In just a few hours, his life takes a completely different direction. His new employer is Saotome Mio, and his role is simple: welcome her when she returns home. As long as he follows the agreement, he will receive the promised salary. With his workplace right next door, the arrangement is as convenient as it is unusual. Even so, one problem remains. People still get his name wrong, and the frustration never quite fades. Despite everything, he understands that this strange situation marks the beginning of a new chapter in his life. From the day she returns home and is welcomed back, a week has passed. She is Saotome Mio, a 28-year-old marketing professional. She works at a small company known for partnering with larger firms on major projects. Her skill and talent stand out clearly in her field. During a call, she explains work matters with confidence, assigning responsibility to a trusted colleague while emphasizing his past achievements. The way she speaks ensures that others take her seriously. Later, Matsutomo hands her a cup of tea. She notices that it has cooled down, and anticipating this, he gives her another cup. She accepts it and drinks while he watches quietly. Observing her, he thinks about how she carries herself, wearing minimal makeup, yet maintaining a composed and guarded presence, almost like someone ready for battle. After finishing her tea, she leaves to begin organizing her tasks. He watches her go and remains standing after she departs. A memory comes to mind, recalling a rare expression she showed when he sent her off. Now, he turns his attention to the room. The first thing he learned about her is her unusual sense of cleanliness. She carefully separates and disposes of food waste and used containers. However, tightly sealed bottles and unopened items remain scattered across the floor because she considers them harmless. A few days earlier, she had explained her reasoning, pointing out the material of plastic bottles and their resistance to damage or contamination. He listened carefully, then reminded her that the space also serves as his workplace and that keeping proper order is part of his responsibility. The second thing he observed is her unfamiliarity with certain meanings and expressions. She does not always understand them, yet she pays little attention and focuses on simple tasks like breaking down boxes. As time passes, it gets close to when she returns home. When she arrives, he greets her warmly. She looks surprised at first, then accepts it, realizing this is part of his role. Gradually, her expression softens into relief and quiet happiness. The third thing he noticed is that, outside of work, she struggles with communication. She becomes lonely easily. Her thoughts about relationships are vague, as she does not fully understand how people allow others to share their personal space so freely. At times, her behavior turns slightly childish, especially after a long and exhausting day. As they sit down to eat, he quietly reflects on everything he has observed so far. Matsutomo prepares the evening meal and arranges several dishes, including meat cooked with ginger and multiple soybean-based sides. The effort he once found tiring now gives him a sense of purpose. Mio reacts with visible excitement and heads off to change her clothes. Before leaving, she briefly asks for help, but he declines and continues focusing on the kitchen. While he works, he thinks about her behavior. He considers that her reactions may result from spending so long without anyone caring for her in this way. He reminds himself to remain focused, fearing that any carelessness could disrupt things. While standing in the kitchen, he calls out so she can eat before the food loses its warmth, but she does not come. He steadies himself and looks around. He holds a bowl and a serving utensil while thinking through the situation. His gaze moves across the kitchen walls and toward the refrigerator, where he remembers checking insect spray earlier in the day. He tries to remain calm, remembering that he had already expected some problems due to the condition of the room. Something suddenly disrupts his composure. He stiffens as he notices an insect in the kitchen. He hesitates, feeling both irritation and unease. Although he dislikes relying on her, he thinks that her unusual views on cleanliness might make her less bothered by the situation. He calls her name without thinking. At the same time, his thoughts start to spiral. He notices her reaction and quickly corrects himself, forcing his expression back to normal. He realizes he cannot handle the situation alone. The confined space makes it feel as though there is no escape, and the tension rises as the insect moves unpredictably. Mio does not respond at first, leaving him to manage both the situation and her lack of reaction. He knows that giving up is not an option. As both her neighbor and someone responsible for this space, he pushes himself to act. He gathers his resolve and focuses on confronting the problem. The insect moves quickly through the room, making the situation even more difficult. After a chaotic struggle, he finally manages to eliminate it using the spray. By the end, everything calms down. Mio regains her composure and is properly dressed, while the kitchen returns to order after the disturbance. Mio begins to cry, and Matsutomo tries to comfort her. He offers her a small dessert and urges her to calm down. She reacts with visible delight, admitting her fondness for sweets. However, she quickly restrains herself and decides to eat her proper meal first. He observes her carefully and concludes that emotional strain is the reason she acts more childlike at times. Accepting this, he gently guides her focus back to the present. He decides that cleaning can wait and prioritizes the meal. He turns his attention to serving the food while it is still fresh. Mio agrees and settles down. He works efficiently, arranging the table while finishing the cooking. He prepares the meat so it can be eaten immediately. Using a prepared sauce as a base, he adds extra ingredients, carefully turning the meat to cook it evenly. He adds a final touch to complete the flavor and then transfers everything for serving. Mio waits at the table, urging him to hurry. He continues without pause, bringing the dishes together and setting everything in place. Once everything is ready, they sit and begin their meal. They express appreciation for the food before eating. As they eat, he reflects on the recipe, remembering that he learned it from a senior at a previous part-time job. The balance of flavor and preparation stands out to him, and he acknowledges that personal preferences vary. Even so, he feels satisfied with how the dish turned out, especially after so long since he last prepared it. Mio tastes the food and reacts with clear happiness, eating with great enthusiasm. Matsutomo watches her while sitting nearby, wondering if the flavor suits her. Her reaction confirms that she is enjoying it. She continues eating quickly, showing little restraint. He reminds her to slow down, encouraging her to chew instead of rushing. She repeatedly expresses how much she likes the meal. As they continue, he reflects on how sharing a meal like this feels pleasant. Since the first day, this routine has brought a sense of comfort. Mio agrees in her own way, enjoying her food. He realizes that moments like this make the effort of cooking worthwhile. After finishing, she suggests spending more time together by playing a card game. He agrees, though he has not played in a long time, and wonders why she owns a game usually requiring more than one player. She explains the rules and points out details about how it should be played, then casually decides to adjust them for their own game. As time passes, she mentions that staying awake too late is not ideal and that they should rest after taking care of themselves. She also recalls that the evening ran late because of earlier work-related events. During their conversation, he reacts lightly, and she notices, turning it into a playful moment where she claims an advantage. He then urges her to go and freshen up so the day can properly end. She suddenly suggests sharing the bath, but he refuses immediately. He knows he would not be able to remain composed and firmly keeps his distance. Matsutomo suggests cleaning the room after bathing. He also points out her earlier behavior practically, noting that such reactions are unnecessary. Matsutomo suggests cleaning the room after bathing. With that, the long evening ends, closing the first week of his new job. The next day arrives, a Saturday. Matsutomo wakes later than usual and notices how long it has been since he last had a proper rest. He checks the time and sees he still has plenty of morning hours. He prepares breakfast and enjoys it calmly. The toast is perfect and the coffee tastes fresh, making the start of his day satisfying. After eating, he sits on the sofa and relaxes. He reflects on the nature of a day off and thinks of Mio. He considers how easily she becomes lonely, yet recognizes that having someone she barely knows staying in her home every day could put pressure on her. He assumes she would want some time alone. At that moment, a voice calls from outside. He realizes this will not be a quiet day after all. He steps out and finds Mio standing there. Surprised by her early arrival, he asks her purpose. She apologizes for coming on his day off and begins to explain. She mentions the events from the previous night, describing them as disorderly. He immediately understands and assumes she feels embarrassed about her actions. He reflects on how people working together sometimes reveal sides of themselves they would rather hide, and how such moments usually remain unspoken. She continues speaking, but he cuts in too quickly, misunderstanding her point. She clarifies that she was referring to the game from the previous night and admits that her earlier comment was not serious. He relaxes and suggests they can play another time, noting how easily those games can take up hours. She accepts this and expects him to keep his word. As he studies her, he notices that she seems calm, though there is a quiet sense of comfort in her expression. Curious, he brings up the real reason she came. She takes out her wallet and offers him money, saying she wants him to accompany her to buy a stuffed toy. He understands what she is saying, but struggles to understand why. He considers that some adults have simple hobbies and that asking someone to come along is not unusual, yet the payment feels unnecessary. He wonders if the money is meant to compensate him for using his day off. She confirms that it is. He gently tells her that something like this does not need payment, but she insists, while he continues to refuse. It becomes clear that they see things differently, and he takes a moment to acknowledge that. He shares his perspective, saying that spending time together like this sounds enjoyable. She hesitates, suggesting he might eventually find her boring, but still asks him to stay with her until they are done. He agrees without hesitation. She admits she is worried about being a burden. Listening to her, he realizes that without their current arrangement, she might never have expected anyone to stay by her side. Gradually, they reach an understanding, discussing things almost like setting terms for an agreement. In the end, they settle on how to handle the outing, turning what should have been a simple plan into something far more complicated than it needed to be. Mio thanks Matsutomo as they spend time together. At the same time, she feels relieved that he came to work even on his day off. The thought of being surrounded by couples and groups makes her uncomfortable. In contrast, he struggles with the idea of treating the situation like an outing. A stuffed toy catches Mio's attention, and she finds its presence comforting. However, she also believes that choosing one is not easy. He then notices that her home is still filled with unopened boxes, leading him to assume that she orders many things online. The scene shifts to a shop in Tokyo that sells plush toys. The place looks normal, but the boy never expected to end up somewhere like this. Mio wants him to experience a world he has never known before. As Matsutomo looks around, he feels overwhelmed by the unfamiliar environment. The large number of cute items only adds to his confusion. While browsing the toys, Mio reflects on how difficult it is to buy them online, since texture and feel cannot be properly judged through a screen. Curious, he asks what she usually orders instead. To his surprise, she says she buys water. At first, he thinks she might mean something unusual, but she explains that she is talking about bottled drinking water from Tokyo. It is commercially sold and has become quite popular. He finds this strange and asks if people actually buy it, since it seems no different from tap water to him. This reminds him of his hometown, Fukuoka, where treated seawater was once sold as drinking water, making the idea feel somewhat familiar. Mio reacts with slight frustration. She says she has heard such opinions before and insists it is practical. She drinks it while talking with customers and sometimes gives it as small gifts. To him, it still feels strange that someone so skilled in communication would behave this way. Wanting to understand, he asks what makes the water different. Mio begins explaining that Tokyo has a highly advanced purification system, but tap water still requires chlorine due to legal standards. She speaks quickly, making it difficult for him to keep up. He then asks whether the bottled version also contains chlorine, knowing that it is used for disinfection. She confirms this and continues, explaining that the water undergoes ozone treatment, which removes impurities such as mold and other unwanted substances. It also improves the taste and eliminates unpleasant smells, resulting in cleaner and fresher water. As he listens, he begins to think that it might actually taste better. Suddenly, Mio focuses on a stuffed toy and holds it closer to examine it carefully. As he watches, he tries to understand what it represents to her. She studies its texture, design, and craftsmanship, and everything about it seems perfect in her eyes. He notices that it resembles a real dog, designed in a realistic style like a small cavalier puppy. Mio compares its size to something she has in mind and appears satisfied. He wonders if she plans to buy only that one, but she indicates that she has already seen many other items. Without lingering, she prepares to move on, and they continue through the store. As they walk, she suggests going to another shop, but before he can correct her, Mio asks if he wants to continue shopping. He smiles and decides to stay with her until the end, telling her that it's for work. Deep down, however, he knows she would not believe him if he admitted that he is enjoying it, and he feels satisfied with his choice. Mio moves forward without delay, focusing on finishing tasks efficiently. While walking, he offers to help her carry the plushie. She refuses, pointing out that he is already holding several things, and he accepts her response. Seeing that she seems to be enjoying herself, he feels pleased and grows curious about what she prefers most. She mentions the octopus plushie and focuses on its texture, but soon after, she heads toward another store. They arrive at a game center. He feels a bit tired, but takes a moment to look around, wondering if the arcade has always been this close. Mio asks if he recognizes the place, and with a tense expression, he recalls having been here before with someone from his previous job. The memory becomes clearer. He had visited with a junior colleague and another co-worker. The junior was hesitant at first because of work, but the co-worker insisted they take a short break. During that visit, he won a plush toy, and he and his co-worker even compared their strength in a game. Mio comments that it's good he became closer to them, seeing it as something that happened by chance. Her words make him reflect further, and he remembers another strange moment from work, when the company president suddenly appeared near a photo booth with an unfamiliar person. Noticing Mio watching him, he says they simply stared at each other in silence. After a few seconds, they both acted as if nothing had happened. He reflects on how casually adults tend to handle awkward situations. Mio then brings up the stuffed animal he had won for his junior. Thinking about it, he realizes that such items cannot be bought in ordinary stores. She shows mild curiosity while fully focused on the arcade. They move toward the crane game, where he explains that the prize is likely on the first floor and may have been there for a month. He is unsure if it is still available. Upon arrival, he notices an unusual prize resembling a saber-toothed tiger frozen in ice. It appears to be an original product, unrelated to any popular series, and he even wonders whether it is meant to be a cat, briefly thinking about possible copyright issues. Mio observes that the prize looks worn, and he explains that stuffed animals in arcade games are intentionally placed in ways that make them difficult to win. This strategy increases the challenge and often causes customers to spend more money. Although he recognizes that this approach is not ideal, he decides they should move on to another shop in search of a better item. Looking at the prize again, he feels it is poorly made and unlikely to appeal to someone like Mio, but she gently nudges him, calling the plushie a good child. He asks if she is sure about it. She simply says she will take it and take care of it. He responds that, in the end, the toy will never grow up. Standing before the crane game, she prepares carefully, treating the moment as an important opportunity. He reminds her to succeed on the first attempt if she wants to claim the prize. However, 20 minutes pass, and the game proves far more difficult than expected. Each attempt feels unforgiving, and every failure adds to the frustration. Mio repeatedly strikes the machine, apologizing to it after each try. While he watches her persistence despite the setbacks, he explains that crane games are designed this way, often requiring players to spend a certain amount before winning. At the final moment, the prize may shift or fall awkwardly, making success even harder. Mio begins to wonder how much she should spend, but he points out that the prize is already worn and will likely be discarded soon, suggesting that she has invested enough. Despite this, she continues trying, even though she lacks skill in these games and fails to get close to winning. Hearing his remark, she wonders aloud whether he understands sugarcoating. In response, he tells her to watch carefully. Although she worries about the cost, he reassures her that it is not significant. In his mind, he reflects that destiny is not something one simply finds, but something that must be earned, and he prepares to prove it. Later, Mio thanks him for working on a holiday as they leave the game center together. She reminds him that it was a day of work, bringing him back to reality. For a moment, he thinks about the day, eating pasta at a cafe and visiting a starfish exhibit, but he accepts that it was not a date. She shows him the toy she managed to win and expresses her gratitude. Observing her closely, he realizes that she is more tired than she appears. He reminds her to take care of the toy and the cats, and she promises to do so immediately before returning to her apartment. She thanks him again and mentions brushing her teeth after having sweets. He also returns home and considers having instant ramen for dinner. While reviewing his finances, he notices a deficit of 17,000 yen for the day. Even so, he feels no regret as the money was spent for Mio. He reminds himself that holding on to stress is harmful. Reflecting on her childlike behavior, he recognizes it as a response to psychological stress. Although activities like visiting the arcade, playing games, and going to the aquarium may have contributed, he realizes that the reason goes deeper than that. Eventually, he arrives at Mio's apartment and calls out to her, but there is no response. Noticing that she left him the key, he assumes she might be showering and decides to wait quietly. However, when he looks inside, he sees her sitting on the floor, surrounded by her toys, quietly talking to them while crying. As she reflects on the day, she feels embarrassed about her behavior at the arcade and about spilling pasta sauce. She worries that he might not go out with her again. Standing behind her, he observes everything and reflects deeply on the situation. He considers the nature of regret and wonders why humans are given such emotions. Even when situations are treated professionally, regret still finds a way to appear. He acknowledges that these feelings are part of being human and that no one, not even fate, can fully understand them. He steps inside and reflects on the day as a whole, thinking about how people form connections when they open up to each other. He questions what fate truly means and quietly resolves to show that it exists when people open up to one another. Mio notices him and asks why he is there, questioning his presence since his work had ended. Realizing that there is little he can do to change her feelings directly, he focuses on what he can offer. Moving closer, he suggests playing Uno, and she agrees. They begin to play together and spend the next several hours in each other's company. They prepare ramen, adding eggs, which helps lift her mood. Afterwards, they play Uno for hours, with the overlapping draw-to rule keeping the game engaging. The scene shifts to Mio murmuring that she is going home as the room fills with the sound of something being stirred. In his office, Matsutomo calmly holds out a small bowl of natto, gently instructing her to mix it into the broth. Fragments of earlier memories drift through his mind. Light rain has fallen during the day, followed by a heavier drizzle at night. Mio has arrived after a long, exhausting day, visibly perspiring and struggling to keep her composure. He suggests that a shower might help her feel refreshed. He notices that she has entered without removing her shoes. As she steps forward, her balance falters, and he quickly steadies her, surprising her with his unexpected strength. She reacts in brief shock at the sudden support. A closer look reveals the truth. She has a high fever. Even as she insists that she is fine, he begins to reconsider her condition, wondering if she is the type who does not fully recognize fatigue or pain even when her body is clearly unwell. With that in mind, he decides to change her clothes. Carrying her inside, he places her gently on the bed. Memories from his youth resurface, reinforcing the urgency of the situation. Any complaints can wait. She had been caught in the rain, and her condition takes priority. Soft, incoherent murmurs escape her as the fever takes hold. He is concerned, as it becomes clear she may not even be fully aware of how sick she is. He gently removes her makeup and wipes the sweat from her skin to help keep her condition from worsening. As he helps her change into clean clothing, her frail condition becomes more apparent, making her vulnerability impossible to ignore. Responsibility settles over him as he takes charge of drying her wet clothes, reflecting on how even the smallest actions carry weight when caring for someone in need. Her weakness is undeniable, and the difficulties she is facing do not go unnoticed. He resolves to care for her properly, without allowing personal feelings to interfere. When he asks if she is hungry, she declines. Still, something light should help, so he decides to prepare porridge and asks her to wait. At the very least, she needs to eat a little to recover. In the kitchen, he gathers ingredients: eggs, rice, and green onions. He mixes and stirs them, then covers the pot and lets it steam. He prepares a heat-resistant container with ice and unseasoned dashi. The egg porridge takes shape as he stirs the rice with dry sardines, finishing it with a sprinkle of green onions. Once it is ready, he heads to her room and knocks. The closed door gives him pause. She may have already fallen asleep. He steps inside and finds her surrounded by scattered items. She greets him warmly. When he asks what she is doing, she explains that she will look for the rest later and introduces a friend named Ah-chan, a pure white fox. She mentions Fu-chan next, but insists it is not Fu-chan. Tears form in her eyes as she speaks, and he warns her not to push herself too hard. He places the food in front of her and encourages her to eat while he looks for A-chan. She asks where A-chan has gone, and he reassures her that he will let her know if they are found. As he feeds her, concern lingers that her fever may be affecting her memory. He pays attention to her appetite, but avoids forcing her. He gives her medicine carefully. A sudden cough interrupts the moment. He immediately checks on her, worried that the powdered medicine may be difficult for her to take. She looks uncertain, and he encourages her to try again for the sake of her health. As he prepares to step out briefly, he asks if she needs anything. She protests, but he reassures her gently and holds her hand so she does not feel abandoned, even for a short time. His phone rings and breaks the silence. On the other end, Tsuchiya greets him warmly and remarks on how long it has been. Tsuchiya explains that his smartphone had been damaged but has since been restored. He expresses interest in celebrating and asks what Matsutomo is doing. Matsutomo explains his current situation briefly, stating that he has, in a sense, been helping someone and is currently busy. Tsuchiya asks about overtime and whether anything has changed since he switched jobs. He mentions heading home and suggests meeting for a drink. Instead, he requests that certain items be delivered to his place without further questions, and the conversation continues without resistance. Matsutomo muses how such conversations normally flow, but imaging the scenario of how his new work-related conversation will go, he doesn't reveal it. He acknowledges that the situation is unusual, but treats it as something he cannot ignore. Mio calls out to him and asks who he is speaking to. He responds quickly and keeps his explanation brief so he does not delay her medicine. He apologizes, noting that the situation is difficult to explain clearly. Tsuchiya reassures him and comments on the voice, assuming it is a woman from work seeking attention. Recognizing the unusual nature of his circumstances, he even assumes Matsutomo's job. Before ending the call, he asks for sake and a grape-flavored drinkable medicine to help her recover and warm up. Tsuchiya agrees without hesitation. After the call ends, he takes a moment to reflect, recognizing that the conversation went smoothly and that speaking quickly helped avoid unnecessary questions. He then returns his focus to caring for Mio and preparing for Tsuchiya's arrival. A short while later, the bell rings. When he looks, Tsuchiya is standing there, having brought exactly what Matsutomo requested: grape-flavored items and sake, including the famous product from Yamaguchi. Matsutomo thanks him, feeling relieved by his timely arrival. Tsuchiya insists on hearing everything that has happened, and Matsutomo begins explaining the situation. Just then, Mio appears and asks whether Tsuchiya is a friend of Matsutomo's. Surprised by her presence, Matsutomo pauses while Tsuchiya admires her and introduces himself. He explains that Mio is Matsutomo's neighbor and employer, having hired him for household tasks so he can earn enough for his living. Reflecting on the situation, Matsutomo realizes that it would have been dishonorable to deceive Tsuchiya. On this rare day, when he returns home by 9 p.m., instead of taking the last train, he hurries to assist. While waiting for Tsuchiya, his mind wanders through the events of the day and the unusual circumstances that brought them together. Smiling, Tsuchiya admits that he does not fully understand the situation. Mio reveals that her work-focused life leaves her lonely, making her dependent on Matsutomo for support. Recognizing that this is Mio's first meeting with Tsuchiya, she approaches the situation professionally, maintaining a work-oriented demeanor. Noticing that Mio appears unwell, Tsuchiya listens as she admits to neglecting her health. She apologizes for her condition and thanks him for bringing medicine. His casual response strikes her as excessive, prompting her to excuse herself. She leaves with the intention of repaying the kindness shown to her. They talk about their cruel boss, and Tsuchiya mentions how his hair transplant worked, but he shifts his attention back to the situation with Mio, reminding Matsutomo to take care of her. Though uncertain, Matsutomo agrees. Tsuchiya adds a final remark about Mio's gratitude, suggesting she might express it through gestures such as a meal or a gift, and then departs, leaving Matsutomo to continue looking after her. Without exaggeration, Matsutomo considers Tsuchiya to be a compassionate and good person. Even with his Kyushu background and somewhat flirtatious reputation, enduring long hours on the last train at a high-pressure company feels worthwhile just to meet him. As Tsuchiya leaves, he stops abruptly. Matsutomo asks what is wrong, and Tsuchiya reminds him that the sake he brought earlier is for Mio alone, emphasizing that it should not be consumed by anyone else. With a fierce expression, he vows not to forgive Matsu for keeping his work arrangement a secret. With that, he heads to the elevator and departs. Frustrated, Matsutomo takes back all the good things he thought about Tsuchiya. He goes to check on Mio and inquires about her condition. She admits to feeling slightly better. Matsutomo reassures her that as long as she did not worsen her condition worrying about Tsuchiya, she is improving, which brings him relief. Mio mentions that she will not see Tsuchiya again for some time. Curious, Matsutomo asks why, and she clarifies that she plans to see him the next day, hoping that even if she upset him, he will still come. He assures her that he does not hate her and would not come if it were too painful, reinforcing that he truly cares about her well-being. Mio reflects that she does not want unpleasant company around her, even if others are present. Matsutomo thinks it over and encourages her not to worry, since she will not see Tsuchiya again for a while. Mio decides to thank Tsuchiya properly once she recovers. Matsutomo shifts focus to preparing food, taking the porridge she is eating. She eats slowly, and he advises her not to force herself, warning that her body could suffer otherwise. After taking a small portion, she thanks him and explains that she could not taste the meal properly earlier. Matsutomo promises to make it again as a late-night snack once she recovers. Mio remarks that the dish tastes best when prepared in a clay pot, and they agree to enjoy it together in the future, sealing it as a promise. Later, he opens the refrigerator and examines the ingredients. Planning to prepare something to complement the porridge before Tsuchiya returns, he notes that Mio's cold has improved slightly. He decides to make the simplest traditional treat, sake eggnog, aiming to match the comfort of the porridge. Gathering ingredients from the kitchen, Matsutomo prepares sake eggnog using leftover soy milk. He measures sugar and honey, heats half a cup of sake in the microwave to reduce the alcohol content, and gently beats the eggs to remove lumps before straining them through a tea strainer. Carefully, he stirs the mixture, adding the heated sake gradually, then incorporates a small amount of hot water and finishes with a little soy milk. Once complete, he brings the drink to Mio, who tastes it with surprise and delight. Matsutomo explains that making sake eggnog at home is simple with a microwave. She expresses gratitude and agrees to enjoy it together once she recovers. He then provides her medicine, reassuring her and using a convenient tool to deliver it smoothly. He watches over her as she takes it, noting the great flavor and texture, ensuring proper consumption. Afterward, he clears the dishes and remains nearby until she falls asleep, reflecting on her possible concern about late-night work. Matsutomo lies down in the living room, observing her as she drifts off, noticing that she has placed a blanket over him despite her high fever the previous night. Surveying the kitchen and surrounding evidence, ingredients, natto containers, discarded pajamas, slippers, and a skirt, he reconstructs the events of the night. Morning arrives, and Mio wakes feeling capable of moving again. She notices that Matsutomo stayed through the night and heads to the kitchen, wanting something to eat before work. She attempts to make the sake eggnog from the previous night but quickly realizes she cannot replicate it perfectly. Mixing raw sake, egg, and sugar results in a drink too strong in alcohol compared to Matsutomo's careful preparation. Recognizing the high alcohol content in the Yamaguchi sake, she understands that consuming it all in one go in the morning would cause intoxication. Despite this, she focuses on getting ready for work, dressing, and preparing to leave. At the office, she confirms her tasks and begins processing the work from the previous day, mentally noting the chaotic state that left her in such condition. Matsutomo observes her again, noticing her struggle with the ingredients and her tasks. She tries to communicate with Fu-chan and Ah-chan but receives no response, leaving her feeling isolated. The kitchen is cluttered with slippers, natto, and unfinished items, creating confusion. Her behavior reminds Matsutomo of a child, and he stands by, unsure how to intervene or restore order while she continues trying to manage the mess. Considering the situation carefully, Matsutomo decides that collaboration is the best option. He calls Tsuchiya for guidance, who answers from the office and listens attentively. Apologizing for disturbing him at work, Matsutomo requests his expertise, specifically about abacuses. Tsuchiya recalls his student days, having learned the basics. Matsutomo asks him to help solve a problem. If someone mistook natto for an abacus while trying to save their company, how could he intervene? Thanks to Tsuchiya's earlier idea of giving Mio an ice cube, she returns to her usual self. With teamwork, they manage the situation. She takes a day off due to a mild fever, avoiding driving to work under the circumstances. In the end, Matsutomo concludes that everything has been resolved appropriately. A few days later, the doorbell rings, signaling a new development. Matsutomo urges Mio to remove her hand and reveal what she has been hiding. She hesitates, feeling embarrassed, but he insists that today is the day it must be shown. Tears fill her eyes, yet she forces herself to remain steadfast, understanding that this is something they both need to face eventually. Finally, she complies. He announces that the unpacking is complete. Every piece of furniture has been arranged in the room, marking the end of the laborious process on a Saturday, during the third week since he changed jobs. The space, now organized, contains numerous shelves filled with books. Mio expresses surprise at the size of the place, noting that even a two-bedroom apartment should not feel so cramped. Matsutomo considers that she had been too tired from weekday work, and his absence on holidays had delayed the task. The prolonged hiding of items had proven futile, and leaving things unopened for 2 years was excessive. The sticky tape on the packages made the task difficult, and handling her old albums and diaries alone would have been awkward, yet the delay allowed him to witness it. He recalls that his previous efforts to reduce work hours and adjust his schedule on weekdays had given him a reason to work on a holiday. When that proved insufficient, he made up for it on his days off. His former job had rigid working hours, and the only lesson he had taken from it was knowledge of loopholes in societal systems, which he now channels positively. They place books on the shelves together. Matsutomo reflects on how many things in the world he still does not know. He notices that Mio brought her graduation album with her. She explains that she could not leave it at her parents' home in Kanagawa. She recalls agonizing over whether to discard her backpack, following her parents' advice to take as much as possible when moving out. Matsutomo acknowledges that such decisions are inevitably difficult. Mio adds that these items carry memories worth keeping. Curious, Matsutomo asks Mio about Achan. She hesitates, surprised that he knows, but he reminds her that she had mentioned Achan herself, turning her room upside down while insisting the toy was missing. Matsutomo realizes that Mio likely does not fully remember what happened when she was sick. He assumes the name belonged to some kind of stuffed toy. She shares that Achan had been her favorite toy until the fall of her 4th year in elementary school, a talking stuffed animal. Matsutomo recognizes it as the type of toy that would speak when its stomach was pressed. Mio adds that the toy resembled another character, Fuchan. Matsutomo asks whether she had thrown it away, and Mio admits that she lost track of it long ago and cannot recall the details. Matsutomo remarks that this is common with childhood toys. Noticing that it is already past lunch, he asks what they should eat. Mio decides to celebrate the completion of the unpacking and thanks him for his help by suggesting lunch at a nice cafe. She also mentions compensating him for working on his day off, though Matsutomo reassures her that he is not concerned about that. They settle on having pasta for their meal. During the meal, Mio expresses how much she enjoyed it, especially the fried shrimp. Matsutomo remembers when she added extra hot sauce to her pasta and could not eat it. He recalls trading dishes with her to show off. The spice he had used was extremely strong, and he apologizes for the incident. Playing Uno is the only thing they can do today. Matsutomo knows that leaving her alone would make her withdraw. As they walk toward the living room, a young girl calls out to Matsutomo Sanapi. She introduces herself as Murasaki and explains that she is indebted to him for guidance at work. Her presence is formal and composed. Her expression is cold and precise, and her quiet voice adds tension to the encounter. The corridor seems frozen under her demeanor. Matsutomo notices that Mio, usually skilled at handling experienced colleagues, is tense. He realizes he must act quickly to prevent her from feeling overwhelmed. He asks for a brief pause to recover from the lingering effects of the spice on his tongue. After a few minutes, he rejoins the conversation. The awkward stillness of the scene weighs on him. Murasaki greets him politely. Engaging silently for several minutes proves unnerving. Matsutomo reminds himself that some small talk is necessary. Mio holds his hand to gain his attention and asks about Murasaki. Matsutomo explains that she was a junior at his previous workplace. She was competent, but not particularly sensible. He has been observing her for some time. Mio reflects on their mutual observation and forms her own conclusion about Murasaki. Matsutomo wonders whether there is some kind of understanding between women. Mio comments that Murasaki is cute and admits she has always wanted a younger sibling. Matsutomo notes that she had never mentioned it before. Mio adds that her desire for a little brother has been slightly satisfied, but she still wishes for a little sister. She expresses a wish to consider Murasaki as a little sister. He objects, pointing out that Murasaki is an adult, and that adopting such a role would require constant interaction. Mio insists that she loves children, and being around someone as small as Murasaki should be fine. Observing her closely, Matsutomo realizes that Murasaki is 22 years old, yet under 150 centimeters is small enough to be mistaken for an 11-year-old brought to work. Mio presses to be introduced, noting that Murasaki mentioned she had business with him. Matsutomo approaches Murasaki and asks whether her conversation is concluded. She responds politely and explains that she brought some of Matsutomo's belongings as requested by her former boss, whom Matsutomo recalls as Tsuchiya's wig boss. Matsutomo notes that it is her day off as well. Murasaki introduces herself formally as Murasaki Saotomi and expresses gratitude toward Matsutomo. Mio asks for her first name. Murasaki replies that it is Kirin, named after a plant her parents liked. Mio finds the name stylish and charming. Murasaki admits that although others praise it, it can be a burden at times. She clarifies that her own name is Mio, written in katakana. Matsutomo reassures her that Saotome is a good person. He observes that when Murasaki opens up, she reveals her true self immediately. Mio asks if Murasaki is busy. Kirin replies that she is not. Mio invites her to join them, and Kirin accepts, planning to spend some time with them. Matsutomo notices that both Mio and Murasaki seem to lack close friends of the same gender. He thinks it would be beneficial for them to find someone they can trust. He asks Murasaki whether she knows how to play Uno. She is surprised that he means the popular card game. Matsutomo explains that they were planning to play together and invites her to join. When they arrive at Mio's home, she comments on Matsutomo's skill in making tea and suggests they have some together. He stands in the kitchen, reflecting that in a short time, Mio is slowly treating Murasaki like a little sister. He enters the room with the prepared tea. Mio remarks on its lovely fragrance. She notes the variety of teas available and appreciates this particular one. Murasaki compliments Saotomi, calling him charming, which prompts Mio to admit she often hears she lacks that kind of charm. Murasaki reassures her that she herself is perfectly charming. Acting almost like an elder brother, Matsutomo announces that the tea is ready and suggests they begin. He serves Mio first. Murasaki hesitates, asking what he means. Matsutomo reveals that they are about to play Uno. Murasaki observes the serious atmosphere, and Matsutomo assures her that she will understand soon. He confirms that everyone has the correct number of cards. Both Mio and Murasaki acknowledge this, and he signals the start of the game, officially beginning their play.
Here I am.